Hello, everybody. We're coming back to our series on rightly dividing the word of truth, which is being put together by the Christadelphian video service. Today, we're going to continue on our series of Bible study helps by talking about concordances, and there will be 3 sessions on this in which there will be many practical exercises. So please, in these 3 studies on concordances, have your concordances ready and then go off and work on the practical things that we ask you to do. And then after that, resume the talk and pick up the next exercise or next explanation. So talking about concordances as an assistance to Bible study. So we would recommend that if you're doing Bible study, that you actually have at least some of the basic tools to help you understand the original Hebrew and Greek the Bible was written in. And here are some of the ones that I would recommend as perhaps a minimum that you need to have at your disposal to be a reasonably effective Bible student. There are many more, much more detailed things you can have, like lexicons and so forth, for those who want to go deeper into the languages. But for the basic Bible student, you need at least these things. I always recommend a Cruden's concordance. This is a very simple concordance that just lists the words that you find in your King James Version, all under one particular section, so you can find a quotation. And when you've got that little quote whirling around your head and you don't know where it is, if you can remember a key word, you grab your Cruden's and you can find it. I always have a Cruden's at handy on my Bible study desk because it's so good to just be able to find the quotation you want at a moment's notice. So Cruden's is a very straightforward, simple way to find something. Strong's Concordance is the most commonly used basic concordance. It's actually the fundamental item in eSword, and it's perhaps in most texts you read on the Bible, Strong's is the first point of call. So again, a highly commended reference and very free usually from doctrinal bias. Young's is another concordance that goes back some times. It does basically the same as Strong's. It has some advantages, is that Young's gives you the number of times that word is translated somewhere else, which you don't get in Strong's. For the New Testament, I would recommend very highly Bullinger or Vine. I personally prefer Bullinger, and I'll tell you why later on. But either of those two or both of those two are very handy tools to have to get your basic understanding of Greek words. You can also have an Englishman's, which gives you both Greek and Hebrew words with a little more detail than you get in Bullinger or Vine. If you really want to get into going a little deeper into Old Testament words, we recommend a thing called the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, otherwise known as TWAT, which is a very, very good source document for understanding Hebrew words in the way they were used in the ancient language. So not just get the meaning of the word, but the way it was used and cross-references to how it was used. So again, I would say these are the basic tools. And of course, anyone using their computer for Bible study should have eSword, and you can get a number of concordances and references attached to your eSword. It's free. I recommend everyone should have it loaded up because it's a very simple and quick way to find things. But in my mind, there is no substitute for having the book in front of you and doing your own thumbing work to find these things in Strong's or Young's or Englishman's or Bullinger's. So what do we use concordances for? Well, Cruden, as I said, is the simple locating of a verse. If you want to follow a word through, you might be doing a study on, let's say you want to do a study on a donkey or an ass, that you'd look up those words and you would follow it through the Bible. Finding the quote you need is easily done with a Cruden's concordance. You can't remember where it is, but you can find it just by looking up a key word. Looking for relevant cross-references. So when you go to Cruden's, you will see all the other times that that particular English word has been used, and you can therefore follow a story or a theme to other places. With Bullinger and Vine, you trace Greek words only, but you get much closer to the original meaning of the word in the Greek language. Theological Word Book is only for Hebrew words. It's a great resource of origins and the way they're used. But you will need to have a converter. At the back of the TWAT, there is a converter to Strong's numbers. So if you're using twat, you need to have a conversion from the twat number to the Strong's number. Strong's and Young's, as we said, suggest meanings. They cover the source of words, where they derive from, the root words and so forth, and they cover the whole Bible. Englishman's covers both Hebrew and Greek words. So again, we use them to get behind the real meaning of the words, because when any translation is done, and particularly one that was done, almost going back 400 to 500 years ago, we are bound to have errors. We are bound to have words that have changed meaning over time. We have ancient words that we don't use in our common language. And we need to go back and check exactly what God has said. So what we need to find out, the different ways a Greek or Hebrew word has been translated. So in many, many cases in the Bible, a word is inconsistently translated. So we want to know all the occurrences where it occurs. How many times is it used? To see if it could have been better translated. Does the word we have in our Bible actually really reflect the original meaning? We want to determine the root words. Sometimes the words we have are combinations of one or more root words, and we see the meanings given for the word that come from those root words. Just a little note of caution about root words. Root words are not the full picture. They are a component of the word that you're studying. I have seen people go quite astray by just picking up the meaning of a root word and then making a story out of that, which is not the full picture. Always be aware that the context that a word appears in may influence the way the word is being used. We'll talk about context in a future section. Work out from the source meanings any better translation to apply. You might come up and say, well, okay, now that I've studied the word, I can see that this word would be better translated with a more modern word, with a word that is more understandable, a word that is closer to the original meaning. Choose the best application for the context. Sometimes you may have a choice of new words to apply, but the context will help you determine the best word to put in its place. Some Hebrew words can have two different meanings, depending on the context. And there are some amazing examples where words that are totally different in meaning in the Hebrew can be used in different contexts in completely different ways. So that's a little potential trap for the unwary. The other reason we use a concordance is there are English words in our King James Version that have changed their meaning or their usage over the years. For instance, the word let meant to hinder. We would say to let somebody go is to release them. In Old English, it was to contain them. The word gay obviously has changed its meaning quite radically because of the world in which we live. So you just need to be aware that some words have changed their meaning over the years. So another note of warning about concordances, most are written by theologians, and we have to be aware of their doctrinal bias in interpretations. Just give one of the worst examples of this. Vine, who wrote on the meaning of the Greek word logos that we get in John chapter 1 and verse 1, says this is the Trinity, which of course is not a Bible word, not a Bible concept. What he should have given us was logos means the word, and defined it as the plan or purpose of God. So that is straight out dishonest Trinitarian bias being introduced into Vine's concordance. Another feature of concordances that is important is that they do not bother with the simple words such as and but and if and the. Those words are usually completely apparent in whatever form they occur, and almost consistently are translated the same. So you won't find them in concordances. Where you go to Strong's and you find a word that has an asterisk alongside of it, it means that in other translations which Strong has listed in the front of his book, other translations have chosen to use a different word. So he's highlighting to you that, there could be some useful information by looking at other translations in relation to this particular word. Only Young's concordance tells you how many times the original word is used and how it has been translated over those number of times. Sometimes 2 or 3 different Greek or Hebrew words are translated by one English word. A classic example in the New Testament is the word world, that is translated world from 3 different Greek words. And part of your homework later on will be to unravel those. Likewise, the word love in the New Testament comes from 2, maybe 3 different words. And so we need to understand that just because it's in our Bible translated as world, it may have a totally different application when you get beyond the original meaning. So again, just some little things about concordances worth noting. So we're now going to give you some examples. And as I said at the outset, at this point of the recording, you can stop. I will leave a gap in the recording here, but you can stop and you can go away and start doing these exercises with your Strong's Concordance, or if you haven't got that, at least you have eSword. And just look up some of these words and work out whether the translation that you have in your Bible is a good translation or not. Now, when you go to Strong's and you look up the word dipped, you will see that there are some numbers in normal print and some are in italics, and they are the Greek words. So the numbers you get in italics are in the Greek section at the back. A lot of people don't realize when they get to a Strong's Concordance that there are 2 sections at the back of the book, a Hebrew section and a Greek section. So make sure you're in the right section, otherwise you'll find that a very confusing outcome. So get your number in the Greek or Hebrew section, go to the relevant section and check out the meaning of the word dipped. You'll see there that Strong will give you alternates to the word dipped. And you'll see that different ways it might be translated in other places. So then look at the derivations of the word. How was the word put together? Is it a combination of different root words? And you get a deeper understanding of what the original word was meant to convey. Now we go to a New Testament one. Let's look up the word in the New Testament, earnestly contend, which we find in Jude verse 3. And the exercise you need to do is look at all the different ways this Greek word has been translated through your Bible. Check out the other context. So there is some examples for you to work on. So please, if you got the time, please stop now the recording and go away and to do those exercises, and then come back and resume at your leisure. The homework for this particular section is the following. So this is something you're to work on privately. We will comment on these things in the next session, just to help you if you found it difficult. But this is the homework for section 1 of Concordances. Trace the English words martyr or martyrs in the New Testament. Find the occurrences of them and look at the meaning of the word. What is the closest meaning of the original Greek for the word martyr? And then we ask the question, which is pretty obvious, but do you think the English meaning may have evolved into something a bit different to what the translators intended? And I think when you go into that word, you will find that's probably the case. Another exercise in Hebrews 11 verse 5, the word translated in relation to Enoch. Check out what the word translated actually means. Do you think that's a good translation or not? And then work out what you think actually happened to Enoch. And we'll come back to those in our next session.